Hey there. Guess what? I'm here in beautiful Portland, Oregon, and I wanted to pick up my story from where it left off all of those weeks and maybe even a couple of months ago. So I just told you about my husband going through, pretty much 19 days in coma, and he had to come home and to a very exhausted, emotionally exhausted and depleted family. This had all happened over Christmas and the Christmas break. And so my kids didn't go back to school. I mean, it was too much for me to do, all the caring for my husband, although he did have home health nurses that came in several times a day, but still taking care of him, caring for my kids, doing all the grocery shopping, doing all the everything, and then still trying to be somewhat spiritual. So it was a difficult decision, but we did make the decision to just take the kids out of school, and we would work on figuring out something with homeschool. So with all of the work that I was doing, I got really so much more exhausted. I would work all day long, and then I would come in, and we even had crazy, we had the book study at our house. What were we thinking? And I remember just going straight into my bedroom. I would get there after the meeting started, and I would just go straight in my bedroom and get in the shower, and I could not make myself go out there. I could hear my husband being loud and giving comments and interacting with the brothers and sisters, and I felt like giving him the because he wasn't, yes, he was recovering from a huge thing, but I was still going through it. And I think, to be fair, I have to say, there were a few sisters that tried to stand up for me and really talk to him about, look, you are here, and maybe you can't get up and mop, or maybe you can't get up and sweep or vacuum or do laundry or whatever, but you have two very capable young boys here that need to be trained. And the way that you train them is, tell them what to do with putting the laundry in the washer and then in the dryer, and then bring it into you, and you fold it and put it on hangers, and then have them put it away. But he thought that those women were stepping out of their bounds because they were, they were trying to counsel a brother. But quite frankly, the brothers in the hall were too, well, you fill in the adjective, to do that. My in-laws that lived down the street were quite aware of how everything was deteriorating. Even though, everybody was so happy that he had survived, our life was not really much easier. I don't know how it would have been different, if he had lived through all of that. I have to just be grateful that it happened the way it did, because we're free, even though it took a lot. But I still had to, I was teaching classes in Fort Worth, which was, an hour drive. And it usually took me at least 30 minutes to an hour to set up a class, and then I would teach the class for 8 hours, and then it would take me so long to tear down the class, and then I'd have to drive back to Dallas and put everything away. And so those were long days, long weekends, because people don't want to take class during the day. They want them in the evenings, and they want them on the weekends. So that's what I was doing on my weekends instead of resting. And I was extremely depressed. And it was during that time that I suggested that, maybe the best thing for us to do would just be to go get in the garage together and turn on the car, and just everybody go to sleep and wake up in paradise. And the elders came over, and they saw that I was very distraught. And there was a couple of them that were so, I could tell they were both tender-hearted. Neither of them had children. They still don't to this day. but they felt my pain and they saw the pain that my kids were going through. And so they tried to help as best they could. But y'all, Jehovah's Witness elders are not licensed counselors. And I was never counseled to get medical help or to get on antidepressants. I did go see a physician who was in our Kingdom Hall. He became a physician. He's famous. Y'all know who he is. Went to him, and he suggested, medication, which I was very grateful for. And so I did get on it. I needed it. I was freaking wiped. I had every right to be depressed, but it didn't mean that I just sat around and did nothing. I was literally, like, how they have walking pneumonia? It was walking depression. I was doing all the things and dying on the inside. So, anyway, we ended up moving to the White Rock congregation. That was about 20 minutes down the road. And everybody said, "Ooh, you're going to White Rock? White Rock has a lot of problems spiritually." So they were kind of famous, at least from the Lake Highlands gang. They thought that White Rock was, kind of terrible. Excuse me. Gotta hydrate. And so we moved into this apartment building where we could just pretty much pull right up and Ralph could get out and go into the apartment. So by the summer of 2007, I had to, I had dropped out of midwifery school. I was also teaching at Baylor University Medical Center. Thank you, Melissa, for helping me get on there because I had stopped working at the local birth center, and my midwifery career had been put on hold. I was really sad about that, but I had to do what I had to do, to kind of make it. So I was working with, birth doula, postpartum doula. And so I finally got to the point where I was so burnt out, I didn't go to like any of the meetings anymore. And that's really, it's an interesting time for me to try to like remember all the things that were going on, because I was really in kind of the robot mode of just doing the things. And so like many of us, there are dark places in my memory bank where I just like lost months at a time. I mean, I remember like things that didn't have to do with the Kingdom Hall. Like I remember going on an all-night birth, and the couple that I was there with, they had gotten an epidural, and so she was not sleepy, and she said, "For Christmas, we got this comedian video of Eddie Izzard," and she said, "Do you mind if we watch it?" And of course, I had no idea who Eddie Izzard was. And if you don't, you should. He's a fabulous executive transvestite. And there's a bit that he does about Engelbert Humperdinck. And he goes through all of these funky, versions of, who came up with that name Engelbert Humperdinck, because it's not his real name. His real name is Jerry Dorsey. So apparently some people were, having a late night meeting and going, "I don't know, what do you want to call him? Jingle Bangs Haptyback or whatever." And he just went down this whole list. And I remember laughing like I hadn't laughed in years. And I thought, this guy is so stinking funny. I feel good laughing at this, apparently sinner, because he's a transvestite, and of course Jehovah's Witnesses can't love transvestites. But he was lovely. It was lovely. And so when I got home from that birth, my older son was at home. I don't know where Preston was. He might have been spending the night with his gran or something. But I remember I brought home food, and Dylan and I laid in bed that morning and ate and watched Eddie Izzard. And that became like my medicine. He made me feel so good. It was little moments of joy that was so wonderful and that sustained me. So when we had moved into this new place, pretty much that was the only respite that I got was, listening to him. And I became a little bit obsessed, joined his like fan club and all of this kind of stuff. And truth be told, I probably had a fan crush, you know, on him. And, but I didn't care. I was just, you know, that was the part of my life that was really enjoyable. So the Shumway family every year would go on these camping trips. And there was going to be a camping trip in the fall. And it was always put on by Uncle Brian. Uncle Brian, I love you. Like, you are the most patient man on earth, that you deal with all those Shumways still. And I just got to tell you, just read my mind, honey. I know. But anyway, he got this camping trip together, and I was, you know, working through the week, and I had given Ralph this list of, like, these are things that we need to get from the store, and this is how we need to get things packed up. I wanted him to get, you know, rubber tubs that we could pack things for the trip. I didn't want to be that family. We were always that family that got somewhere and we didn't have our stuff and we had to borrow stuff from people. Ugh. And of course there was always, you know, oh, it's fine, it's fine. But I felt like it reflected poorly on me because, you know, I had my stuff together at one time and everything started kind of falling apart when I had to do all the things on top of, you know, a sick husband and kids who weren't in school and feeling all guilty about all of that. So by the time it came time for us to leave for that camping trip, and I saw that he was literally just throwing stuff in the back of our trooper. And I said, no, you have to think about what you're putting in so that we can check to make sure that we have it. We have to be able to get to the most important things first. So don't just throw stuff in there. We had the two of us. We had our two kids. We had a big golden retriever doggie. She was giant too. And I was like, we have to have stuff for her. We can't just throw stuff in there. And he was so defiant. Do I look like Nimrod? So defiant. That was Ralph. He would get so big and so, I still like Mufasa. But it's true. Oh man, the things that I can be grateful for now. But he threw a fit. And he was like, you are not the man of the family. And looking back, I could say, you know what? Neither were you. I'm having way too much fun today. I'm just in such a happier part of my life. I love it so much that I can look back on all of those times and really, like, truly laugh about it. So it took him 2 hours that day to leave after I said, look, y'all go do this. I will not get rest on this trip. I'm going to be frustrated because there's going to be stuff that we don't have. And I was so tired of feeling like we always had to ask for food or we always had to ask for that really important thing. You know, everybody else had like a coordinated menu and we didn't know about any of that. So I didn't want to do it. And he was so angry with me. But he loaded up the boys and he drove off. And I sat in the apartment in the silence and just took a breath. And I realized I could do anything I wanted. And so you know what I did? I went and I rented a carpet steamer. And I cleaned my apartment from top to bottom because it was a pit. And I felt so good. So I had this neighbor who was a Jehovah's Witness. We lived on the same floor. We lived in this apartment over here, and her family lived in that apartment over there in the corner. Sherry Reed, you know who I'm talking about. And she came over and she said, girl, I have something I want you to watch. And she had me watch the stage play, Tyler Perry's Medea Goes to Jail. And it's very important that we know that it's the stage play, not the movie. 2 different stories. And in there is a moment, and it's kind of like famous on social media now, that moment where Medea talks about, you know, the friends that you have, are they for, you know, are they temporary friends? Are they lifetime friends? You know, friendships like like a tree. Sometimes they're leaves and they're just there for a season and they fall off, and then you have a limb, and then you have the roots of the tree. And so sometimes you think you get married to somebody thinking they're the roots of the tree, and you find out they're just a leaf on the tree. And, you know, anyway, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, go look it up. But it really spoke to me, and I thought, wow, you know, and in that Medea, she talks about how that when you have somebody in your life that is making you miserable, you gotta let them go. And man, like it really, like I thought, you know, the thought of that was so scary to me, because that would have been being disloyal to Jehovah. But at the same time, I heard the logic of what she was saying, and how my life had been so miserable ever since I married that Jehovah's Witness. And was it for anything bad? No, I wanted to live a good, clean, respectable, responsible life. And he was just this, I mean, he was just a fire hose with garbage and filth and everything. I had every right to feel that way, but I didn't know it. So after I watched it, Sherry came over and she said, "Did you watch it?" And I said, "Yeah." And we talked for a little bit, and she said, "Brenda, there's a circuit overseer from Africa that's here, and he's going to show a slideshow tomorrow night at the Kingdom Hall, and I would take you if you would go with me." And I said, "Oh, Sherry, I don't even think I have Kingdom Hall clothes anymore." And she said, "It doesn't matter. You can wear anything. I just want you to be with me." And that felt so good, to have somebody just want me. And so I thought about it, and I went with her that next night, and I sat in the Kingdom Hall and I sang the songs. And it felt weird, because I was singing the songs and not hearing this obnoxious man with the booming voice. You know how they are. There's always that one in the Kingdom Hall. That was my husband. Oh, and they would all say, "Oh, Brother Shabbat, you have such a beautiful voice." Oh, it's all we heard all the time. And I was singing at the Kingdom Hall, and I didn't have to hear that. And it felt good. And I felt like I could walk up to people and have a conversation, and not have somebody right there, you know, just like taking over the conversation for me. Y'all, I learned to be so silent in the years that I was married to that monster. Because if I ever started voicing my opinion, he would come, you know, he would just come in and, you know, take over my sentence. And then afterwards, she said, "We're going to go out to Chili's. Do you want to go with us?" And I thought, I can. Like, I can. I can go out to Chili's, and I don't have to feel any sort of way except just myself. And God, I thank that woman. I thank her so much for what she did for me, to just make me feel like a person. And so the next morning, about 10:30, my friend Sherilyn called me. And she and her husband, Larry, were really good friends of mine. They were actually the ones that came and rescued me from the hospital. That hadn't happened yet, but they asked me to come and have lunch with them. They were in service, and everybody was going to meet at this little Italian restaurant. And I went over and I had lunch with them. And then Sherilyn, I told her that I had been to the Kingdom Hall the night before, and she said, "How did you feel?" And I said, "Well, I felt kind of awkward because I didn't like have any like Kingdom Hall clothes or whatever." And she said, "Brenda, we need to get you some Kingdom Hall clothes." And so she took me shopping that day, and she took me, you know, I was always a thrift store mom because I never had money. Like, I couldn't buy like retail. And she took me to Dillard's, and she said, "I don't want you to go to the sale rack. I want you to find what's pretty, what you feel like you would be pretty in." And I had never thought about that. You know, I'd always just thought about, what is modest and what isn't going to show boobs, and, you know, just something to feel pretty in. And then she started showing me, she was a big into jewelry, and I was not. And she told me that I was one of the most girly deprived women she knew because I didn't have, I wore the same earrings every day, every day, every day. Just wore my wedding ring. That was pretty much it. And so she took me to buy jewelry and even all the way down to stockings. And she said, I want you to be able to go to the Kingdom Hall tomorrow and feel pretty. And so Sherry took me to Kingdom Hall again the next day. And then my husband and kids came home from the camping trip. The kids were great. They had had a good time with their cousins, with their uncles. They were grateful to be, somewhere other than just, in the crazy house there. But he would always come in and present himself one way, and then when the bedroom doors closed, everything got, serious. And, well, what did you think about, how you defied your husband this weekend? And I was just not up for it. And I had felt so good about being at the Kingdom Hall, and I thought, you know what? The Kingdom Hall is actually a place that if I work it right, I can start to put up the wall where I can have my friends. And if I have to go outside and get away from him, or just be in the ladies' room, to talk with my friends, that is what I'm going to do, because I cannot live the rest of my life like this, that this is the only thing in my life is work or this. God, work was so important to me, y'all. Work became my booze, It was my escape. It was something that I was good at, and it was something that he couldn't interrupt, or so I thought. So I'm going to stop right there today, but when we start up again, I'm going to tell you what happened that next Sunday when we went to the Kingdom Hall as a family. Thanks so much for listening. Please like and subscribe. Please share, you guys, my little channel. I'm so proud of myself for doing this. I know that this is important. It's important for me because of the response that I'm getting for you. I know it's important for you too. I'm trying to be brave and tell bits that helps you know that you are not the only one that lived in the crazy. You weren't. And the happy is out here, and it is so worth everything that you have to do to find this happy, because it's great. Ooh. So help me spread my little channel so that more people can find the happy. Love you. Mwah. You are so damn worthy. See you next time.